Welcome to Hypocrites and Contradictions. I am your host, Eddie Estell, and this is the official relaunch. And I want to welcome you all to my exclusive podcast, and I want to introduce you to somebody special. Our first guest on the relaunch is my man, Karim Russell, the CEO and owner of Royal Oils Grooming. Say hello, Karim.
What's going on? What's going on? I appreciate you having me out, Eddie.
No problem, brother. So, baseline of Hypocrites and Contradictions is this is a space where we change perspectives through conversation. So there's not really this is what I believe and I'm sticking to a thing. This is something where we can open our minds up and maybe you can convince me to think a completely different way than from when we first sat down. So if you could, Karim, just tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about Royal Oils Grooming.
That's what's up, man. Me, I'm an introverted, extroverted person, man. I love business, but I love my personal time just as much. Originally, my origin is East Orange, New Jersey, but now I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte, North Carolina has been great to me. I really love the atmosphere. I love the environment. I love the entrepreneur spirit, and it's also the Southern banking capital. So it's a lot of money flowing through the city. I'm the oldest of 5 boys. I grew up in the 2-parent home until it wasn't, and that kind of made me the man I am today as far as being very studious and ambitious when it comes to earning and providing for myself and those that I love.
Got it. So East Orange, New Jersey, from what I know about that place, it's pretty rough. If you could, just tell me a little bit about growing up in East Orange as the eldest of 5.
Well, of course, I'm the eldest of 5, all sons. My mom had all boys. It was a rough start. It was a rough place. I was fortunate enough to have my grandparents in place to kind of take some pressure off my parents because they were young when they had me. They were in their early 20s. And so I had a strong foundation in terms of entrepreneurship. I felt a lot of love in the house. But as you grow up in those environments, things can get very tense because it was a hood. It wasn't, a suburb. It was a hood. And having 5 brothers and being the oldest, you had to learn to be tough quick. And so that kind of helped me to become more mentally strong because initially growing up, I wasn't always I didn't have the thick skin. I was very emotional growing up, but I realized a lot of those ways could have got me washed up, especially in my environment. So I learned to control my emotions. I learned to master my anger. I learned to do things that were going to preserve me in a dangerous environment. But I also understood that I wouldn't be here for long, so I like to deal in duality. I have both sides to me because of my environment.
Okay. Now, you said you had a brief experience in entrepreneurship at an early age. You were exposed to it early. So tell me about that. And also, if you could, dive into how you master your emotions, because emotions is something I usually don't deal in, and that's strictly because of my upbringing as well. But tell me how you actually mastered your emotions and what exactly entrepreneurship you dabbled and dabbled in as a young boy.
Well, my grandfather was the owner of some barbershops. He owned a couple of homes, and my grandmother had a restaurant. So I would constantly, and it was crazy because the barbershop and the restaurant was across the street from my elementary school. So from kindergarten to 5th grade, I went to Columbian Elementary School on Springdale Ave and Grove in East Orange, New Jersey. And my grandparents were a fixture in our community. So all my teachers, our principals, they knew who my grandparents were. And working under my grandfather in his barbershop or being with him a lot, I would watch so many different individuals from the communities, from drug dealers to police officers to firemen to teachers, all visit and get the services from my grandparents. So my grandfather would have me sweep the floor, he'll pay me. My grandmother would have me sweep her floor, they'll pay me. And early on, they kind of showed me the importance of, 1, working for yourself, and 2, that you only get what you earn. So you really got to push that agenda of being able to want to earn for yourself because nothing is given. As far as mastering my emotions, when you grow up with 5 brothers, you tend to get angry quick. You're fighting over food, you're fighting over cereal, you're fighting over TV, you're fighting over a lot of different things. And I was just tired of fighting. So a lot of the things I was fighting over, I was getting mad at because I couldn't have my way. So I found different ways to more or less not let the things that my brothers were doing get to me. And I started to learn to master my emotions at that age, probably around 12 or 13 years old. And then I was getting into certain fights in my environment where I felt played. So if somebody would do something that, I didn't even know how I was supposed to feel, but I would feel angry off of things that people did that I didn't think I would do to them. So that would lead to different fights or arguments. And after a while, you realize not to give people that much control of you, or you'll be fighting every day.
That's facts. So how did you turn, so 5 brothers. First of all, I got 1 brother, and
Right.
that's enough for me.
Right.
And you got 4,
Mm-hmm.
right? At what point did it become a single parent household and you had to become sort of the leader of the clan? And how did that change you?
Well, my father really raised me to be a leader because I was the oldest. My mother and father separated my freshman year in high school, and it's strange because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And me going into high school, that was a very pivotal stage of my life because you have a lot of social pressures at that time. You're dealing with me. I'm dealing with females now, so I'm really just kind of touch and go with everything. I'm really operating in groupthink because I don't have a man in my life at this particular time. Me and my father relationship wasn't the best, even though we grew up close. I was kind of upset that him and my mother separated, so I was lashing out in different ways. But in terms of the importance, my father kind of raised me to be the head of my brothers. He always made sure that whatever I was able to obtain, I've always had enough to share with my brothers. And so that type of responsibility was pressed on me early, but he was in the house, so it wasn't no real pressure. But once he left and he wasn't around on a daily basis, then those pressures became to protect my brothers and also provide for my brothers. So I got my first job at 14. I also jumped off the porch, as they say in the hood. I started to dabble into more street things to earn money, things that I wasn't really super aware of, but they were so prevalent in my community, and I knew I could make some extra money. So at that time, I began to start to deal in the streets. Not as much as I would be later,
right.
But that was my foundation around 14 and 15 years old. I started dealing with drugs and not using them personally, but selling them to people that I knew would use them, and using that money to do simple things like buy me and my brothers dinner. Because when my mom and my father separated, you don't realize at the time, my mom was going through depression. She had been with this man for 20 years at that point. I was 15. She had been with him about 5 years before I was born. So for her to lose her husband in the way that she lost him in terms of, to infidelity to other women, it really took a toll on her self-esteem. And I couldn't process that. I was saying, hey, we're still here, focus on us. But when I realized that her attention and focus wasn't primarily on us, my attention and focus became on me and my brothers and making sure that, I didn't want to be a burden to my mom. So one of the reasons I started to earn different income was because I still had needs. I still wanted to dress nice. I still wanted to, keep money in my pocket. And I didn't want to burden my mom because I knew that she was doing it on her own. And in that space, your brothers, they see what you're doing, and they still want to do what you're doing because you're the oldest. So it was like I had to understand that I had to be responsible enough not to introduce a lifestyle, which was the streets, to them, but also be real with them and let them know what I was doing. So it was kind of like a real tightrope,
How did you maintain that balance, though? Because for me, how much older are you than your brothers?
Well, the ages vary from 2 years to 7 years. So
okay.
My brother under me, I'm 2 years older than him, and my youngest brother, I'm 7 years older than him. So it was I didn't do a good job at balancing that at first because I didn't realize that it wasn't what I said, but what I did that they paid attention to.
Right.
So I could tell them, hey, don't do that, but they see the type of company that I'm keeping, and like I said, it was a lot of social pressure. So I have a lot of my friends that I'm dealing with, they're in close proximity to me. They're either at my house or they're on my block or I'm on their block. And my brothers would see that and they would become curious about what I was doing, and they would never ask direct. And the funny thing about it was a lot of my friends that I was hanging out with, their brothers and my brothers were in the same grade. So, they were coming together and they were putting two and two together. What your brother do with my brother? Well, my brother do this. And of course, they were saying, well, they're together, they must do this. And not wanting to really confront me with it, but they were more so interested in buying them sneakers, me making sure that they had what they wanted. And I was really interested in making sure that I can take up the slack that my father had left by leaving. So, it was a tough tightrope, but eventually I was able to just, keep it real with them and let them know, do what I say, not what I do. And, but they still did what they wanted to do, and even though I would tell them or try to lead them into doing or being better than me, you normally do what your environment dictates, unless you have a strong knowledge of self. And at that time, I was becoming aware of who I was, but I wasn't applying the proper information at that time. I was still falling victim to what they call groupthink. I was a leader. However, I didn't want to be a standout. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to lose the social influence that I had gathered by being in my environment and being able to stand on my own.
Okay. So, with you dibbling and dabbling in the streets just a tad bit, when did the curve start to happen, though? Because I know you went to college, right?
Right.
So how did you make I don't even want to call it a transition, because sometimes we just have the ability to live in two worlds at the same time, right? That's a gift or a curse. But how did you sort of maintain the psychological well-being to go to college and still exist in that other world?
Well, I would have to say that had a lot to do with my upbringing and foundation. Like, my grandfather was a strong influence in my life. And so, understanding his value system and what was important, I always knew I did what I had to do, but that wasn't all I was capable of doing.
Right.
And the way that I got into college, I didn't apply for college. I actually, had kind of given up hope on going to college because I wasn't the best student in terms of my GPA. And so I wanted to go to community college at first, but I was able to be around certain friends who were athletes who had got scholarships to colleges, and two of my homeboys who are like brothers, they got a scholarship to Winston-Salem State University. So they went down there, I want to say it was spring semester 2005. I was in the streets. I had definitely been in the streets at this time because I was out of high school. I was a full adult legally. And I realized, what? Maybe I won't go to college, so maybe this environment will be the environment that I have to be in, and I want to make sure that I won't get taken advantage of, so I'm going to be in the streets. But those two guys came back that summer from college, and they were telling me, yo, man, it's some money down south. It's a lot of opportunity for us, man. They'll never know what hit them. And so they invited me to come back with them. Now, initially, I wasn't in school. My whole reason for coming down was to hustle, was to get money, was to, figure out a way to make a better situation out of state. And so when they invited me down, they hooked me up with some of their coaches. I didn't play sports. I played sports in high school, but I didn't have any desire to play it after high school. And I was able to run into one of the administration of Winston-Salem State University, who were, what's the department that lets you into school? Admissions, right? And so I met this guy. I won't say his name because the way he let me into school was definitely illegal. You know what I'm saying? It was a favor for a favor. He actually wanted to purchase what I was selling at the time. And he was able to get me into school off of a conversation. And at that time, school was, to get into college, especially that HBCU, they were kind of lax in terms of, they weren't as stringent with the grades and with the prerequisites that they are now. So a good conversation got me into school, and I had an aunt who lived in North Carolina. So not only did I get into school, I had opportunity to use her address, and they gave me in-state tuition. So it was like I was blessed twofold. So August 5th, 2005, I came down south, and by August 17th, I was a full student in a four-year university. And I had a 1.8 GPA leaving out of high school. So, where I'm from, we call that a move bus. I bust a move to get into school, and that opportunity to get into school opened my eyes. However, I still wasn't accustomed to living outside of where I was from. So what I didn't realize was, when in Rome, do what Romans do. I bought that New Jersey attitude down south, and that almost got me washed up in 2008 when my boy who brought me down here had caught a federal case. And because we were roommates and I was doing what I was doing and he was doing what he was doing, because they were looking at him, what I was doing got put under a microscope, and it kind of got wild from that point.
Okay. So let's talk about this, because I too went to an HBCU for almost 2 years before I transferred clear across the country so I could get away. How did that change your mindset? Because sometimes like an HBCU can be almost too familiar, right? I went from, being in an all-black high school to going to an all-black college, and it's just a lot of the same. How did you adjust to that? Because now it's like you in the same high school environment, but you got no parents. Now you got to do your homework on your own and be responsible for yourself. Now I know you might have been a little bit used to that. Like, how did you make that transition? Because obviously you lasted until 2008, 2009. What was that experience like, having to actually live on your own? No parents, no brothers, no nothing.
Well, I had been living on my own in terms of, once my pops left, there was no more structure in the house. I was the man of the house. So my ability to be responsible, I always put the idea of, I can't do nothing that would jeopardize my family's structure. I have to be around. So even though I was in the streets, I still knew my boundaries and limits. I still made sure that I didn't do anything that was totally opposed to who I was. I was always about making money. So, hustling and doing things like that, even though the hustle was illegal, I was okay with those consequences. I didn't want to do anything to physically harm or hurt anybody unless they were physically, unless I was in clear and present danger. So when I was able to get to school, a lot of the people that I ran into in school, I had this saying in college: I'm not a student, college is just my hustle. So, the things that a lot of the students were becoming familiar with, like having freedom, doing what they want to do, I had been doing that for 3 years prior. I didn't have any curfew. I can come in when I wanted to. I basically lived like I was the man at 15 years old. So when I went to school, the only thing that took me time to get accustomed to was the educational piece, in terms of, you have professors, they're not like high school teachers where it's like you go to that class every day and they tell you, hey, do you have your homework, X, Y, and Z. Man, you could show up to class if you wanted to, or not show up to class if you wanted to. You could bring your work in if you wanted to, or not bring your work in if you wanted to. They were focused on it wasn't a personal focus as much as it was a group focus. So if you didn't do what you had to do, they weren't stopping to say, hey, Karim, you didn't do what you needed to do. They was like, I'm being paid and you paying to come here. So, you'll see next semester if you have the grades to stay or not. And so my first semester, it took me some getting used to, man. But the good thing about college is the social aspect. So I was able to meet individuals that I was able to barter with them, right? So my thing was about college, you got people that know how to do things, and you got people that know why they need to be done. I wasn't necessarily the greatest student. I wasn't a great test taker. I wasn't a great studier, but what I did understand was that there were people in my major that were, but they might have been socially awkward. So me understanding social skills, I've always been a people person because I've always prided myself in doing business. And one of the key factors in doing business is psychological. You have to understand who and what you're dealing with. So I was able to kind of scope out the different classes I was in, identify who was who, what was what, and then I would make my approach. So some of my classmates were studious individuals, and I knew, what can I barter with them for them to help me in the areas that I lack, i.e. test taking, i.e. Homework assignments, things like that. So I found things that they desired that I could offer for things that I needed that they could offer, and that kind of helped me get through school or college. Now, when I caught a case in 2008, that to me was a scary thing, because even though they didn't charge me with what they were charging my homeboy with, they caught me in the midst of doing what I was doing, which was selling drugs. And, I thought I was El Chapo, but to them, it wasn't a large enough case. So, I spent some money. I lost my financial aid for a year, had to pay out of pocket. When they locked my homeboy up, that was my roommate, so I had to, I had somebody splitting the bills with. Now I had to carry the load of the bills. I had to carry the load of, staying in school. And, it's kind of funny because I think that was my karma. I was so focused on making money that I disregarded some of the things that I knew that were morally wrong. And so being that I did that, the things that I desired the most, which was making money, now I had to spend a tremendous amount of it just to stay free and also to stay in school, because once I was able to get in school, to me it would have been a failure not to complete it. Not knowing what I know now, that school was just a social experiment. It allowed me to meet different people from different environments, different parts of the country, to understand, how to deal with individuals who weren't from my exact environment and how to thrive and, make relationships with them. Now I'm in the position where it's like, I might lose that because of who I was around and what I thought was important, when in all honesty, I had a great opportunity to rebrand myself, but I didn't take advantage of it because I brought my old way of thinking to a new environment.
Okay. Well, how did that, obviously you moved on from this college experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How did that transfer? Did you start working after college, or how did you go from, being sort of this street entrepreneur, we'll call it? How did you transform as far as going from Winston-Salem State, ending up in Charlotte? Okay,
so after my homeboy got locked up and he got sentenced on his first ever case, he got sentenced to 17 years in federal, and that was like a brother to me. So we're writing, I'm sending him money, and I'm looking at the situation, and I'm realizing I'm not going to be able to live the way I want to live by being in the streets. And I also looked at, we don't come from a rich background. So the federal system was moving my boy from state to state, state to state. Our parents couldn't afford to come visit us in college, let alone visit you in Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, wherever you were incarcerated at. So I said, if I take the same aggression and ambition to make money that I applied in the streets, I could apply it to any aspect of legitimate business. So from 2008, 2009, I was still dabbling in the streets because I had created habits of making money off of street transactions. But I decided at that point around 2009, like, you know what? I'm going 100% legit. I was working for this security company while I was in school, and when I graduated in 2010, I wanted to help kids who I knew come from the same, similar background that I come from, make better decisions. So I started my first company. Now, me being someone who didn't mind talking to people, I was a hustler by nature. I got an internship in Winston-Salem, and it was a blessing because the person that I interned with had just received a grant for about $1.5 million to do a program for the next 4 years in the area that I was starting my business in. So I did such a good job interning, and he seen the way that youth were clamoring to me, that they were attracted to me, that he was like, hey man, I really want you to work with me with this grant. So I started a company called Future Endeavors in 2010, and he let me work with him under the guise of my company, and I was able to start the business and work the business for 4.5 years, making good money, gaining great experience right after college. So it was kind of like something that I feel like was ordained for me. As soon as I started the company, I got my first contract. And then from that contract, I built a relationship with a mental health company, because a lot of the youth that we were dealing with, they suffer from PTSD. They grew up in rough environments. They were drugging. Some of them were gang members. A lot of them had been accustomed to violence, and they didn't understand how this environment can take toll on your mental as you evolved into a young adult and then to a full-grown adult. Right. So, like I said, once again, I had the ability to speak with people and talk to people and build relationships. And I built a relationship with a mental health company where I was able to transition some of the youth from this nonprofit organization I was working with to really getting some mental health help. But my business acumen crept in to where I was able to negotiate a fee because they were billing for a large amount of money for dealing with these kids. And so when you work with youth, even though you give it your all, you're not going to be able to reach everybody. And a lot of the times when you're dealing with youth from underprivileged environments, their parents expect you to play a parental role even more so than they're playing. And you can begin to be burnt out because you're only working with kids 2 to 4 hours a day, but they have to be in their environment for the rest of that time. So you may not see the effects of your work immediately. And some of the kids that I was working with, as much as I poured into them, they still fell victim to their environment. But me negotiating with these mental health companies allowed me to set up a nest egg outside of my regular money that allowed me to move from Winston-Salem to Charlotte and be able to set up another business because I had money already put away. Right. So as I was transitioning from working with youth on the service side, I was able to sustain myself without having to get another job and create another business called RoyalOilsGrooming Company, which was really a spinoff of Future Endeavors, because Future Endeavors was a service company where we taught youth entrepreneurship, social and professional skill development. And Royal Oils was the product side, to where grooming is very important. You are what you see yourself as. And I learned early on, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you perform good. If you perform good, you earn well. And so I then began to use some of the foundation from my first company as far as the professional and social skill development to take this product line and further it. And I was able to use some of the youth that I dealt with before to show them firsthand how to build a product company. So, it just kind of went full circle, went from service to products. And at the same time that you're selling products, you're also offering a service. Correct. You know what I mean? So that right there was, to me, I felt like it was just the logical next step. And so, here we are, Charlotte 5 years later, doing extremely well. Right.
And this is what Royal Oils is in their, third year? You just celebrated your third year, right?
Third year in business. It took me, so I moved to Charlotte in 2014. I officially started my company in 2016, Royal Oils Grooming. However, It took me 2 years to develop, understand, do research, because, you know, even though I had some money put away, it wasn't enough money to hire a team.
Right.
You know, it wasn't enough money. A lot of the stuff I was doing myself. So I was learning my customer base. I was understanding what it took to make a product, ingredients. I was understanding who really would benefit from the product. I was understanding the market in terms of male grooming and where I fit in it. I was understanding packaging, shipping, labeling, all these different things I was doing myself, even to building my own websites. These are all things I've never done before. So, you know, learning that from the bottom to the top to where I eventually was earning enough money to then hire people to do certain services for me, but I had already been familiar with the services, so I knew if someone was overcharging me, if somebody was bull crapping me, if somebody was just trying to get over, because I had done everything prior to hiring people. So, you know, to me that was a great benefit, especially starting off as a small business and now I'm growing into a large company.
Boom. All right, so we got it. So I appreciate you for giving me the rundown on the past, right?
Right.
And so now we have this product, Royal Oils Grooming.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, you didn't went through the research phase. Now you're at the phase to where you are beginning, or you're starting to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me exactly what Royal Oils Grooming is. Tell me exactly who Royal Oils Grooming is.
Okay, well, Royal Oils Grooming is a product line and a service company for men, right? Because my concept was we're transitioning into a new phase of life in terms of a lot of the blue collar work is still available, but it's not as prevalent as it once was in my grandfather's or my father's era. So a lot of the men now are getting jobs and getting business based off of how they look, how they speak, how they carry themselves. So you want to make sure that you're well groomed. One of the things about grooming that's important is it's not just your physical, but it's your mental, right? And so with Royal Oils, with us being a product line that services your hair, your skin, your beard, we deal in essential oils that also relax the senses. Because we're in the information era, we're consuming so much that a lot of the things that we're consuming are also stressing us out because we believe the hype about we need this, we need that. We're not nothing if we don't have this. So when I first started indulging into Royal Oils, my thing was, how do I relax myself? Because I'm a thinking man, I'm a doer, so I'm always, you know, trying to conquer and solve problems. And so I started researching the importance of essential oils like rosemary, tea tree, lavender, how, you know, they can relax migraines, calm the senses, you know, help you to just overall relax. So I said, you know what? I want to offer something to guys who is not only beneficial for their skin, their hair, their beard, but also a form of aromatherapy, a form of therapy that would, when you're using my product and you apply it to you, it also provides a sense of tranquility, right? It also provides something for you on a spiritual side. That's why our products, every product that I create, I name according to what I want it to provide for the customer. So one of our products is called King's Rise. And the reason I call it King's Rise is because we infuse it with essential oils that perk the senses, like the lemons, the lavenders, the bergamots, things that when you smell, it kind of make you upbeat. It kind of makes you ready to conquer the day. Wakes you up. So that was the thing that I said, you know what? When men get up in the morning before they go to work, before they conquer the day, apply this. From the soap to the skin serum to the butter. It's all integrated with essential oils, and it's created with the intent to have you start your day off on the right foot. And, you know, so as I creatively name these products, the intentions is for it to provide what the label says that it's provide. You know? Okay.
So if you could, like, you're using this term essential oils, right? Now, a lot of other people use alcohol-based products. If you could, just tell us the difference between some of the alcohol-based products and the essential oils that you're speaking about.
Well, the essential, when people use alcohol-based products, like for colognes and things like that, the alcohol allows the product to spread more. When you spray it on you, it provides a stronger, but not a longer lasting, but just a stronger initial smell. However, when you're dealing in the essential oils, you're dealing in things like what you put on your skin goes into your blood.
Right.
You understand? So with me using all natural products, it's okay to apply this and it actually seeps into you because there's no preservatives, there's nothing harmful about it. So the reason I use and that's why I believe they call them essential oils, because one, these things are essential to your well-being. A lot of people don't understand how shades and mangoes and lavenders and tea trees and eucalyptus, how they are great for the mind, body, and spirit. A lot of the things we use, like the alcohol-based or other preservative-based items, they're only used in your products because they want to enhance the shelf life of it, right? So it's kind of like embalming a corpse. It's like, you're not going to stink as long as you got this on you. But we know that it's not natural. So there's going to be other side effects or potential side effects to using those products. Like I said, man, with me, I wanted everything to be natural. I wanted everything to be something that would benefit and holistically benefit the face, this beard, the skin, the hair, without causing any harmful side effects.
My dog. I appreciate that.
No doubt, man.
We're going to get into where we can find Royal Oils Grooming later on in the podcast. If you could, though, you brought something up that was this is pretty much where we connect. And you talking about holistic thinking and waking up the senses. So you talked about a little bit from where you came from.
Right.
And how you evolved into being an emotionally intelligent individual. If you could, just enlighten the folks on how entrepreneurially your mindset has changed over the years and where you are now mentally as far as learning from some of the things that you went through and coming to a place to where you actually are aware of where you are and where you want to go.
A lot of that had to do with understanding the knowledge of who I was and who I wanted to be, right? When it came to entrepreneurship, I always knew that I wanted to be independent as far as working for myself and not having to clock in. And I got that from my grandfather, man. I used to watch how he would be able to move around, and I also understood that the business he was in, he was almost like a therapist to people that he cut. And people relied on a good haircut because it boosted their self-esteem. So when it came to entrepreneurship, my mindset was always help or assist people in feeling good about themselves. And as long as I was able to, because I think by nature I'm a healer. People love to confide in me. I love to read, understand, process, and provide advice for those that are around me. Because I understand that everybody is not going to find themselves unless they put themselves to certain tests. And certain people are scared to put themselves to certain tests. So in becoming an entrepreneur, I had made my mind up early. I wasn't afraid to risk, not being comfortable.
Right.
And the bottom line is, I'm 34 years old. I don't have any children as of yet. And that was a decision made because I said it may be a time where I may have to live in my car.
Right.
I may have to, do things in order to live the way that I desire to live that I wouldn't want to put anybody else through.
Right.
Right? Especially children. So having that mindset, my second semester in college, I was homeless because one of the guys who initially brought me down, he left school. He was like, he was playing football. He got into it with the coach. He was like, man, I'm done. And he left. Now, I had to make a critical choice. I said, man, when he left, he let us know during winter break, like, I'm not going back. I'm like, well, damn, bro, you the reason we down there.
Right.
What you mean you're not going back? And so at that time, I had to make a decision. Do I stay in this environment that I know will destroy me if I continue to go down the path that I go down, or do I go back and risk, being homeless? Because I was staying in his room. I didn't have any housing. I got in-state tuition. I was just thugging it out. And I remember making that decision. I was like, well, there's nothing up here for me. And if I stay up here, at that time, one of my close friends had just got caught trafficking drugs, and he was looking at a strong sentence. And a lot of my other friends, we were growing apart because I wasn't subscribing to the lifestyle that they were totally engulfed in. So I decided to go back to school, not knowing the outcome, not knowing, what was going to happen. But I said, I'd rather be uncomfortable in a new environment than get comfortable in my old environment that can possibly destroy me, and not only destroy me physically, but just beat down the dreams that I had of myself. I always knew I was going to be successful. I didn't know exactly what I was going to be successful in, but just the way I was raised, my grandfather, and I keep hearkening back to him because he was like my best friend. I admired him so much because he didn't treat me like a kid. I remembered he would make me count his money. He would make me clean up his shops. And I remember just that feeling of being empowered. And I knew that the only way I can feel this feeling again is if I provided it for myself. No one else could provide this feeling for me but me. And, that helped spark and instill that entrepreneurship mindset. But my grandfather would also tell me, like, yo, man, sometimes I work side gigs, He actually used to do security at night because he was like, I still got a family to take care of. If the shop is ever slow, I still got to do what I got to do. And that doesn't make me less of an entrepreneur. Right. It doesn't make me less of a businessman. It makes me more of it because I do whatever I got to do to sustain myself and my family. And so, he was a big part of the reason my mindset was so strong. You know what I mean? And, I always credit him.
Kudos to Grandpa.
Yeah, for sure.
So, future-wise, right? Mm-hmm. We got to this point to where everything is moving and shaking. You've taken the necessary risks that you need to take. And also, a FYI, a lot of these billionaires and millionaires that we look up to, they haven't mastered the art of their craft. They've mastered the art of failing. They know how to fail and bounce back. Because that's really the key to this whole thing.
Yes, it is.
Like, how much money can you lose and bounce back from? So if we name all these people who we idolize, your Steve Jobs, your Gates, your Puff Daddy, your Sean Carter's, like, these people like took major losses.
Your Nipsey Hussles.
Correct. They took major losses.
Indeed.
And were able to bounce back.
Indeed.
Right? Mark Cuban is another one.
Indeed.
Even the one that's in the White House took a lot of L's.
Yeah.
So if you could, like, tell me about, now that you've sort of figured this game out, well, not necessarily figured it out, but you know what I'm saying. You got a deep understanding of what you need to do in order to move forward. What's the future for Royal Oils Grooming?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that, man, because we have a tremendous future. We're taking over the grooming game. We're also introducing women products too, because what I noticed is women are our number one consumers. Even if they consume it for their men, being that it's all natural products, they use it on themselves, and I've been getting great reviews. But another thing that, I decided that we were going to get into is the service side of grooming, right? In this era, everybody wants convenience. And so when I think about grooming, like I said, I think about the mind, the body, and the spirit. And I said, how do I create a service that can enhance my product? Because product is just that's the very first start. I think the reason I did product was because it's easy for me to get product in many houses, right? But the service side is going to be great because we're doing, and if you go to my website, if you check out our packaging, our slogan is grooming on the go. And we're opening up a mobile grooming service. We're not doing haircuts. we're only doing high-end luxury grooming, scalp massages, actual shoulders and neck massages, facials, manicures, pedicures. We're providing a mobile social setting for 8 to 10 people at a time to get treated like kings and queens, right? So you're talking about concierge services. You're talking about experts in the field of skin and hair care. You're talking about, high-end liqueurs, things that make you feel like you're being catered to and every need is being met when it comes to grooming. You're able to associate with your friends and be social on our mobile transportation vehicle. You're also able to, drink, be merry. You're also able to get catered to with, like I said, these different services from massages to facials to manicures to pedicures to music, all the way down to we have our concierge. He'll steam clean, your shirt, your tie, because it's more of a luxury service. And then our next step after that is, and I didn't want to share it, but this is an exclusive podcast, so I'll let you know. We're putting our vending machines into airports. So that's why our initial, when we started it, I said grooming on the go. That's always been on my heart. I traveled a lot, and I used to be like, man, I remember going to the airport and I had to leave one of my colognes because it wasn't travel size, and I wasn't aware of that. And I was like, dang, that was my favorite cologne, and I couldn't find a spot in the airport that provided me with that cologne for the price that I paid. So I said, you know what? It was 2016. I was going through Charlotte Airport, and I said, yo, it'd be dope if I had my company right next to Bath and Body Works, and I had a vending machine that would give you all natural, great smelling products for your hair, skin, and your beard that you could get while on the go, while traveling. So these are the steps that we're taking. We're working right now. We're making our first purchase on we have what it looked like a party bus, but it's really a 30-passenger diesel bus. We're purchasing that at the end of August, and we're getting everything gutted out. So by the top of the year, we're hoping to be offering that mobile service, and by March 2020, we plan on having our first vending machine in Charlotte Airport.
Okay, appreciate that. So if you could tell us where we can actually find not only Royal Oils Grooming, but you. How can we buy your product? How can we tune into you? How can we find you?
Instagram, Royal Oils Grooming. Facebook, Royal Oils Grooming. Twitter, Royal Oils Grooming. And if you want to get in contact with me personally, RoyalOilsGrooming.com is the website that offers the products, but also you can send me a message and I'll respond, and we can set up one-on-one appointments for any products that you need for your hair, skin, and beard. And we're actually taking it to another level because being that I've been getting so many great responses about the products, I've decided to start doing personal products. So if you need anything for your skin, your hair, and your beard, specifically catered towards you, I'll make it for you personally.
My dog, I appreciate you coming on, brother.
You already know. Anytime,
this will not be the last time we see you, because we got books we've been reading.
Yes, sir.
We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff on this new podcast.
Yes,
so,
sir.
Again, this was the very first relaunch of Hypocrites and Contradictions podcast. You can catch me on SoundCloud, Hypocrites and Contradictions. You can catch me on iTunes, and you can also log in to my Patreon page, which is Eddie Estell _experience. You can find me on Instagram, Eddie Estell _ experience. Sorry about that. That's Eddie Estell _ experience on Instagram. I appreciate you all being here. If you forget anything that Karim said, you can also DM me and I'll personally send you the info. I appreciate you all checking in. And remember, this podcast is for opening minds and changing perspectives through conversation. Thank you for logging in. Y'all have a good week.
Yes, sir. That was dope.